etc. Monks, those who have neglected the 7 factors of enlightenment have neglected the noble path leading to the complete destruction of suffering. And those who have undertaken the 7 factors of enlightenment have undertaken the noble path leading to the complete destruction of suffering. So this is just to reiterate the importance of the 7 factors of enlightenment. If you neglect the 7 factors of enlightenment, you are not walking the path to the destruction of suffering. It's only when you undertake the 7 factors of enlightenment, cultivate the 7 Bojjhangas, that you are walking the path to the complete destruction of suffering. The next sutta is 46.26. The Buddha said, "Monks, develop the path and the way that leads to the destruction of craving." And what is the path and the way that leads to the destruction of craving? It is the 7 factors of enlightenment. What 7? The enlightenment factor of recollection, the enlightenment factor of investigation of Dhamma, the enlightenment factor of energy, the enlightenment factor of delight, the enlightenment factor of tranquility, the enlightenment factor of concentration, enlightenment factor of equanimity. When this was said, the Venerable Udayi asked the Blessed One, "Venerable Sir, how are the 7 factors of enlightenment developed and cultivated so that they lead to the destruction of craving?" The Buddha said, "Here, Udayi, a monk develops the enlightenment factor of recollection, which is based upon seclusion, dispassion and cessation, maturing in release, which is vast, exalted, measureless, without ill will. When he develops the enlightenment factor of recollection, which is based upon seclusion, etc., craving is abandoned. With the abandoning of craving, karma is abandoned. With the abandoning of karma, suffering is abandoned. Similarly, he develops the enlightenment factor of investigation of Dhamma, energy, piti, tranquility, concentration, equanimity. And when he develops these 7 factors, craving is abandoned. With the abandoning of craving, karma is abandoned. With the abandoning of karma, suffering is abandoned. Thus, Udayi, with the destruction of craving comes the destruction of karma. With the destruction of karma comes the destruction of suffering." So when a monk develops the 7 factors of enlightenment, then the craving is abandoned because there's no need to crave for external things. The happiness is within him. So when he has no craving external things, he does not look for anything, so he does not do any karma. And then slowly it will lead him to liberation. Not doing any karma means not doing anything evil, which is necessary, and not even doing any good deeds like charity and all that. 46.29. Monks, I do not see even one other thing that, when developed and cultivated, leads to the abandoning of the things that fetter so effectively as this, the 7 factors of enlightenment. What 7? The enlightenment factor of recollection, the enlightenment factor of investigation of Dhamma, etc. And how, monks, are the 7 factors of enlightenment developed and cultivated so that they lead to the abandoning of the things that fetter? Here, monks, a monk develops the enlightenment factor of recollection, which is based upon seclusion, dispassion and cessation, maturing in release. He develops the enlightenment factor of investigation of Dhamma, etc., which is based upon seclusion, dispassion and cessation, maturing in release. It is when the 7 factors of enlightenment are developed and cultivated in this way that they lead to the abandoning of the things that fetter. And what monks are the things that fetter? The eye is the thing that fetters. It is here that these fetters, shackles and clamps arise. The ear is the thing that fetters. The nose, the tongue, the body, the mind is the thing that fetters. It is here that these fetters, shackles and clamps arise. These are called the things that fetter. It's the end of the sutta. So the 6 sense bases are the things that fetter us to samsara. And when we cultivate the 7 Bojjhangas, it leads to liberation, and then all the 6 sense bases will be abandoned. 46.40. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling among the Sumbas, where there was a town of the Sumbas named Siddhaka. Then the Venerable Udayi approached the Blessed One and said, "It is wonderful, Venerable Sir, it is amazing, Venerable Sir, how helpful has been my devotion and reverence for the Blessed One, my sense of shame and fear of wrongdoing. For in the past, Venerable Sir, when I was still a householder, I did not have much concern for the Dhamma or the Sangha. But when I considered my devotion and reverence for the Blessed One, and my sense of shame and fear of wrongdoing, I went forth from the household life into homelessness. The Blessed One taught me the Dhamma thus: such is form, such its origin, such its passing away, such is feeling, such is perception, volition, consciousness, such their origin, such their passing away. Then, Venerable Sir, while I was staying in an empty hut, following along with the surge and decline of the 5 aggregates of attachment, I directly knew as it really is, this is suffering. I directly knew as it really is, this is the origin of suffering. I directly knew as it really is, this is the cessation of suffering. I directly knew as it really is, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. I have made the breakthrough to the Dhamma, Venerable Sir, and have obtained the path, which when I have developed and cultivated, will lead me on while I am dwelling in the appropriate way to such a state that I shall understand. Destroyed is birth, the holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more for this state of being. I have obtained the enlightenment factor of recollection, which when I have developed and cultivated will lead me on while I am dwelling in the appropriate way to such a state that I shall understand. Destroyed is birth. I have developed the enlightenment factor of investigation of Dhamma, etc., which when developed and cultivated will lead me on while I am dwelling in the appropriate way to such a state that I shall understand. Destroyed is birth. This, Venerable Sir, is the path that I have obtained, which will lead me on to such a state that I shall understand. Destroyed is birth. There is no more for the state of being. And the Buddha said, "Good, good, Udayi. Indeed, Udayi, this is the path that you have obtained. And when you have developed and cultivated it, it will lead you on while you are dwelling in the appropriate way to such a state that you will understand. Destroyed is birth. The holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more for this state of being." So this sutta, this Venerable Udayi said that when he was a householder, he did not have much concern for the Dhamma or the Sangha. But when he reflected on the Buddha's teachings and on the Buddha and all that, then he went forth. And after he went forth, the Buddha taught him about the 5 aggregates of attachment. Then when he was staying in an empty kuti, he was contemplating the rise and fall of the 5 aggregates of attachment, the body, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness, how impermanent they are. Then he saw he understood the 4 noble truths, and then he obtained the first path. Looks like what he means is he has attained the stream entry, and then he says that if he continues practicing the 7 Bojjhanga, it will lead him to complete liberation. So the next sutta is 46.31. Monks, whatever states there are that are wholesome, partaking of the wholesome, pertaining to the wholesome, they are all rooted in diligence, appamada, converge upon diligence, and diligence is declared to be the chief among them. When a monk is diligent, it is to be expected that he will develop and cultivate the 7 Bojjhangas, factors of enlightenment. And how, monks, does a monk who is diligent develop and cultivate the 7 factors of enlightenment? Here, monks, a monk develops the enlightenment factor of recollection, the enlightenment factor of investigation of Dhamma, etc., which are based upon seclusion, dispassion and cessation, maturing in release. It is in this way, monks, that a monk who is diligent develops and cultivates the 7 factors of enlightenment. So here the Buddha says that of all the wholesome states, diligence, energetic effort is the most important. If we want anything, we need to put in a lot of effort to get what we want. And we must also have the Dhamma to guide us so that we put our effort in the right direction. If you put your effort in the wrong direction, you'll be wasting your time. So it's very important to understand the path very clearly and then to be diligent. The second sutta, the next sutta, 46.32. Monks, whatever states there are that are wholesome, partaking of the wholesome, pertaining to the wholesome, they are all rooted in careful attention, yoniso manasikara, converge upon careful attention, and careful attention is declared to be the chief among them. When a monk is accomplished in careful attention, it is to be expected that he will develop and cultivate the 7 factors of enlightenment. And how, monks, does a monk who is accomplished in careful attention develop and cultivate the 7 factors of enlightenment? As before, he cultivates the factor of recollection, followed by the factor of investigation of Dhamma, followed by energy, etc. So here the Buddha says that careful attention is extremely important. It's just like the diligence. What is this careful attention? The Pali word is yoniso manasikara. Yoniso comes from the word yoni, which means the womb or the birthplace. Mana is the mind. Kara is work. So it is work of mind that leads you to the birthplace or origin of the problem. So when you think of a problem, you are able to consider up to the cause, the origin of the problem. In other words, it is a good translation is thorough consideration. Thorough consideration. So you consider carefully and can see very clearly. So if a person, his mind is very clear, then he can consider very thoroughly and he can see the situation very well. Which reminds me like the King Solomon is supposed to be very wise. So one day, 2 ladies were fighting over one baby. So one claimed that this baby belongs to her, the other claimed that the baby belongs to her. So they brought these 2 ladies and the baby to the king. So the king looked at the problem and then he thought about the problem. So he must have this yoniso manasikara. He could see problem very clearly. So he said, you 2 quarrelsome ladies making big fuss. Okay, you want the baby, ask the soldier to cut the baby in half, you take half, he take half. So the real mother, when she heard this, she cried. She said, no, don't do that. If she wants a baby, let her have her. So it's very clear, King Solomon, this lady that cried is the mother. So he gave the baby to her. So you see, to be able to see clearly,